Hello. So I just wanted to talk about some of the things I've been reading lately. As I said quite some time ago, I haven't been feeling well at all. So between me just not feeling well and preparing for NaNoWriMo, I haven't done as much reading as I would like to. First, we're gonna go with the negatives. There was Paradox Bound by Peter Clines. I mentioned in the last reading update that I had soft abandoned it, and just to remind you, soft abandon is when I basically stop reading something that I'm not getting along with because I have other things to read and I might get back to it if I have time. Well, I ended up just completely abandoning this book because I really didn't feel like reading it. There was a part of me that was kind of wondering what happens. You always wonder how a story plays out, but I didn't care enough to actually want to read it, and I think that was the downfall. I think if I would have just kept reading it, everything would have been fine, but once I stopped reading it, I did not want to get back to it. Every time I thought about getting back to that book, I just, The main thing, I think the character ruined the story for me. I was so repulsed by the protagonist that it ruined the entire book for me. There was nothing wrong with the writing style. I noticed that a lot of people did like this book. I just couldn't stand, I couldn't stand Eli enough to want to stick with this book, so I had to abandon it. Also, there was another book that I had received in the mail, and I showed you guys. This was a physical arc called House of Shadows. It appeared to be like a mystery / romance type deal going on, and I just could not get into it. I think I got about a third into the book, and it just wasn't for me. There's nothing wrong with the book, the story, the writing that I can point out. I just don't think it was for me. I'm not a big romance person to begin with. I don't think it was for me, but because it is a physical arc as opposed to a digital galley, I probably will try to read it again. With the digital galleys, they eventually expire, so if I don't finish the book or I abandon it, unless I'm gonna find it at a library, I'm done with it, but I will get back to this book at some point. Right now, it just didn't catch my interest. So, on to the good stuff. There was a book that I read that I really loved that came out this month. I read it as a digital galley, and it was called Mental, Lithium, Love, and Losing Your Mind by Jamie Lowe. Maybe the reason why I liked it so much is because, like the author, I do suffer from bipolar disorder. The only difference is I suffer from bipolar 2. She suffers bipolar 1, which is extremely different because people with bipolar 1 have experienced at least one episode of full-blown mania in their entire life, something that I have not experienced. I guess originally this book was titled Grand Delusions before it was changed. The honesty of it talking about what was her first manic episode. I don't know if I would be willing to admit the things that she admitted because, she was so high up in her mania that, she's thinking that Muppets were, talking to her and that people were after her as a teenager. And she kept having this struggle, which a lot of people have, where you get on the medication and then you have this dumb idea that you don't need it anymore and then all heck breaks loose. I loved the story because she basically talked about her life struggle with this disorder. It was sad, it was harrowing, there were some parts that were extremely funny. Some people did not like this book because they felt that the narrative just was all over the place. Maybe it's because I have my own struggles with bipolar disorder and Asperger's and I'm just neurotic. I didn't notice it. I thought the narrative was amazing, but the thing is, that is what bipolar is like sometimes. Bipolar is all over the place, and I thought it was an amazing narrative. This is a memoir, so it isn't necessarily educational. She does throw in here and there the history of bipolar disorder as far as, diagnosis, treatment, stuff like that. This is more going along for the ride than it is educational, even though you definitely get a very clear view of what bipolar 1 can be like for some people. I would recommend it. Like I said, some people didn't like the narrative. I thought it was amazing. Then there was Devotion by Patti Smith. I don't know how, I don't think I've read all of Patti Smith's books. I have read a couple of her books, and mainly what caused me to gravitate towards the books I read was because they're in the news section and they're not huge books, and it looks like an easy read, but I just really like her writing. This one, this I really don't even know how to explain this. The story that she wrote, I loved it. I I would recommend read the, is it called synopsis? The summary. Read the summary of this book and see if it sounds like something you would like. I just really don't know how to explain it, but I loved it. But I like Patti Smith's writing, so I don't know what else to say about that. Then there is Write Your Novel from the Middle. This was a book that I talked about in the last video. The director of my library was nice enough to order a couple of writing books. This was one of them. It's a very small book, and as I said in the other video, whether or not this is helpful for you really depends on where you're at in your writing. If you consider yourself a more advanced writer, you may not get as much out of it, or you might get a little fresh perspective. I thought it was useful. I wouldn't say that it blew me away or changed much about the way I write, but I recommend people check it out. So next we have, haven't returned this yet, Dear Fahrenheit 451, Love and Heartbreak in the Stacks, a librarian's love letters and breakup notes to the books in her life by Annie Spence. This is a collection of love letters and breakup letters to books. So, my favorite category, books about books. Written by a librarian. I thought this was such a cute idea. I loved it. You know, she talks about all these different books, and it kind of opened up a rabbit hole for me because I'm seeing all these titles, and there was a couple I never heard of. So I really fell in love with this, and there's also some recommendations of books to read in certain situations. I would recommend this one. We have No Plot, No Problem. This was another book I mentioned in the last video. This is a book that was written by the founder of NaNoWriMo. I did not read this whole thing. I didn't have a lot of time. This book is on a queue. There are other people waiting for it, and I did not want to hold on to it for the entire 3 weeks that I have with it. I read a chapter or two, but I mostly skimmed it, and I really do want this book now. I just like the way it's written. I like the way it's sectioned, and I think it would be very helpful for someone who is getting into NaNoWriMo or has just been having problems. I would recommend it. And once again, you can get this at Amazon, anywhere books are sold, and also on the NaNoWriMo site. As I said in the last video, they do have autographed copies of this book. And last but not least, Retton Links' Book of Mythicality by Rhett McLaughlin and Link Neal. If you like good mythical morning, you need this in your life. I was very excited and happy to see that my library carried this. I adore this book. It's very rare that I actually say I need to buy this. If you are a good mythical morning fan, this is the perfect coffee table book. It talks about the history of Good Mythical Morning, but it also talks about their history as being friends for, 30 years. Just all sorts of crazy, insane stuff in here. If you're a fan, you need to have this. So right now there's only one book I am reading that I'm trying to plow through, and it was a book that I received from First to Read, but I did not request. Sometimes they just send you an email that says, hey, here's a book. So I was not expecting it. It is a biography, and it is called Hoover, The Life and Times of Herbert Hoover by Kenneth White. This book is a beast. I'm only about 20% in. if you're following me on Goodreads, the reason why I updated it in percentage and not pages is because there is a pretty huge disparity between the amount of pages Goodreads says the book has and the amount of pages that is actually on the digital gallery. It's about like 200-page difference. So that's why I'm doing percentage. The book is interesting, but like I said, it was a book I wasn't expecting. So I opened the book and I see that it's like over 800 pages. The book was released on the 10th, but there was no way that I was going to beast mode through 800 pages between the time that I received the book and the time the book was released. So I'm going to try to finish it before NaNoWriMo starts. There's nothing wrong with it. It's not boring or anything. It's just... Hoover's the only book that I'm reading right now. There is another book that is on hold for me at the library that I totally forgot about, and we will talk about that later. You guys already know that I'm a big girl geek, so you won't be surprised. That's it for now, so I hope you have a great day, great weekend, great week, and happy reading.